Cult People is a compilation of interviews I did for several movie magazines between the years 2002 and 2007. I think the best interviews I did and the most interesting with people like George A. Romero, Dario Argento, Enzo G. Castellari, Vincent Cassel, people who were basically important to cult culture. Well, I started doing interviews when I was around 23 years old, when I was working in La Cosa magazine. My first interview was with J.R. Bookwalter, who's the director of The Dead Next Door and Robot Ninja. And I was fascinated by the fact that I found his website on the internet. I emailed him and told him, I want to do an interview with you, and he answered like 5 minutes after that. From then on, I started thinking about interviewing maybe bigger stars or just people like Bookwalter. I figured out it wasn't that difficult, even if I was in Argentina. David Carradine, who didn't give too many interviews, but was interested because he had done a movie here in Argentina. So he said, oh, you're from Argentina, blah, blah, blah. And then was okay with doing the interview. Well, my first encounter with cult cinema was when I had, I think, 6 years old. I remember I was with my parents at someone else's house, a friend of them, I think, and they were having dinner, and I was alone in the bedroom and wanted to watch TV. And I found out they were showing a Brian De Palma movie. It's called The Fury, I think, with Andrew Stevens and Amy Irving and Kirk Douglas. It's a movie that's very similar to Scanners in some ways, that they make people's heads explode and stuff like that. I remember being fascinated by the fact that it was so bizarre. It wasn't really horrific because it didn't scare you, but it had some particular scenes where Andrew Stevens started killing people with his mind and making them bleed. I first started being a little scared, but then I found out he was the hero of the film in a way, so I kind of liked it, and I started seeking other movies like that, and some of them really scared me, like The Exorcist or Nightmare on Elm Street, which if you watch at 7, 6 years old, it can really scare you. I started being fascinated by movies that could scare you, and also by movies that were so bizarre and strange that you couldn't take your eyes off them. Well, my most difficult and disappointing interview is obviously not in the book, but it was with Alan Rickman, who I was a big fan of, and we did it in the Mar del Plata Film Festival, which is a big film festival here in Argentina. I went to do the interview, and he was supposed to be, I don't know, 20 minutes later in some lunch, or they were going to take him to show him the city or something like that. So the guy didn't want to do the interview. He had to do it because of the festival. So he was very uncool in every question, and I asked him a lot about Die Hard, and he didn't care about Die Hard. He didn't want to talk about Die Hard, and all I wanted to know was about Die Hard. So he said, now ask me about my other movies, my theater movies, Sense and Sensibility, blah, blah, blah. Wasn't interested at all about Sense and Sensibility, and wanted to know about Die Hard. And he wanted to talk about those other movies, and he didn't want to talk about the Harry Potter movies, so it was like 15 minutes of agony. The most satisfying thing about doing interviews is that you can get to know, at least for an hour or an hour and a half, someone that you admire or that you think his work can be interesting. Sometimes in person, which is really cool, like in the case of Ken Russell, he was a little bit drunk, just a little bit, and it was really funny, or Shinya Tsukamoto, who was really a character. And also when you talk on the phone with some people, they are really surprised that you know so much about their career. When I talked to Michael Paré or Billy Drago or Lance Henriksen, they couldn't believe that I knew so much about their movies, and sometimes really dark movies. Like I remember asking Lance Henriksen about a film called The Outfit, which he had shot with Billy Drago in 3 days. I mean, their part was 3 days long. and he couldn't believe I had seen it. Caroline couldn't believe, for example, the film they did had been seen by so many people here in Argentina and was being shown on TV even today. Talking to Argento was a blast, telling him, oh, Suspiria, Deep Red were such masterpieces, and hearing the voice of the man who had made them is truly cool. One fascinating thing about Dario Argento, for example, was that we did the interview in Spanish, and he told me, I speak really good Spanish because he had made some movies in Almeria, he had been in Spain. It was really bizarre because his Spanish had a lot of Italian accent, so it was almost like doing the interview in Italian, but it was cool. I think there are two interviews that I would love to do that I didn't have the chance to do yet. One is with Steven Seagal. I would love to talk to the guy and about his career, his most strange films like Marked for Death. And I think the other one would be Chuck Norris. A Chuck Norris interview would be really good because he made really special movies in the 80s that today are part of our culture. I think what I like most about cult movies is that anything can happen, that you cannot see what's coming next. And I think you go to see Transformers 2 and you know the Autobots are gonna win and that Shia LaBeouf is gonna get the girl and that no one's gonna get killed. And you basically have seen the film before even going to see it in the cinema. And movies like, I don't know, Eraserhead or even The Toxic Avenger by Lloyd Kaufman or Shinya Tsukamoto movies or Argento movies, you cannot tell what's going to happen next. I mean, in Night of the Living Dead, for example, the hero dies at the end, which would never happen in a mainstream Hollywood film. And in Tetsuo by Tsukamoto, you can tell what's going to happen in 2 seconds next. It's really a roller coaster, and I think that's the coolest thing about cult movies or independent film in that way, that it's something that it is an experience. It's not that you go to the cinema to be just entertained, but also to be surprised.